"We didn't order for your kid," my dad said as my son sat in front of an empty plate. "My sister's kids had custom meals and sodas." "He can share the rolls," she added. My parents laughed. My 8-year-old son was strong and didn't cry. I just waited. And when the waiter came back, I stood and said this. We were at Ruth's Bay Steakhouse for my dad's 68th birthday. A place they only picked because they knew I'd be the one paying. That had been the deal for months. I'd cover dinner, and they'd finally stop dragging their feet on helping me with the down payment for the townhouse. My mom said, "It'll even out." My dad said, "We raised you. You owe us that much." I didn't argue. I just kept telling myself it would be the last time I played along. My sister Lauren had already arrived with her 2 kids. They were sipping custom sodas with glowing ice cubes. Each one had ordered their own steak, medium rare, with fries on the side and dessert already pre-selected. My 8-year-old son Ben sat next to me, smiling at everyone like he always did. Just a quiet kid who wanted to be included. The waiter came around, asked for final confirmations. My sister added one more side. My dad clarified how he wanted his steak done. My mom changed her wine choice. Then the waiter looked at Ben. Before either of us could answer, my dad waved his hand. "We didn't order for your kid." I turned my head. Ben blinked. He looked at me. I looked at my dad, then my sister. Lauren laughed a little. My mom was pouring herself more water. "He can share the rolls," she said. The waiter hesitated. He looked confused, then nodded and walked off. Ben didn't cry. He looked at the rolls and picked one up like it was normal. I said nothing. My hands were clenched under the table. When the waiter came back with drinks, I stood up. "I'll be right back," I said. I stepped out and found the waiter near the bar. "I need to order one more thing. Off menu. I want the filet mignon double truffle butter, the surf add-on. Full set. And can you make it special? Just quietly and keep it a surprise." He smiled, nodded. "Also, I won't be covering the bill tonight. My dad will. Let's just say plans changed. Don't say anything until the check comes." I went back to the table. They were mid-conversation about how Lauren's youngest got a part in some school play. My mom was bragging like she coached the kid herself. No one looked up when I sat down. Not even when I told Ben his surprise was coming. When the food finally arrived, they served my son last. The dish was unreal. The table actually went quiet for a moment. My dad looked confused. My mom was already starting to look nervous. "Who ordered that?" "I did." "And you're paying for it?" "Well, you are. In fact, you're paying for all of this." They thought I was joking. Until the waiter brought the check and placed it in front of my dad. That steak had bumped the total higher than he expected. His hand trembled when he picked it up. I stood up again. "Then let's go. Dinner's over." We walked out without dessert. I heard Lauren say something snide as we left, and my mom muttering about how I was making a scene. But the only scene that mattered was the one where my kid finally got something they couldn't take from him. When we got home, my head was pounding from all the fake smiles, the whining, the entitlement. I made Ben hot cocoa and promised him a movie night. But the next morning, the real storm hit. My mom emptied the joint account. Every last dollar. She took $4,000. And then she said it was her money all along. The alert came while I was making pancakes. Joint checking account. $0. At first I thought I'd read it wrong. I refreshed the screen. Still zero. Then I saw the transaction. Full withdrawal, 8:17 a.m. from the branch near my parents' house. I stood in the kitchen staring at my phone while Ben sat at the table humming to himself, stacking blueberries into a little tower. I called my mom. She picked up with a breezy hello, like she hadn't just stolen money from me. I said, "You emptied the account." He said, "Calm down. It was time we took care of our own needs for once." I said, "That money was for my down payment. You never contributed to it. You said it would just be a temporary joint account in case I needed help with the loan process." She said, "You've always taken more than you give. Maybe now we're just even." Then she hung up. No warning. No explanation. Just gone. $4,000. The same parents who refused to buy my son a meal had just taken the savings I'd worked 2 jobs to build. The same parents who said I owed them. And the worst part? It didn't even surprise me. I barely had time to sit down before my sister Lauren called. She opened with, "You really embarrassed Dad." Apparently Mom had already called her, saying I'd made a scene at the birthday dinner, refused to pay like I promised, and stormed out without explanation. The story was that I'd humiliated the family over nothing. I asked her if she knew what happened with Ben. If she remembered the moment he was left sitting there without a meal, being told he could eat leftover rolls. He said, "Well, he seemed fine." I hung up. By noon the whispers started. 2 of my aunts texted. A family friend I hadn't seen in years left me a voice message saying, "I hope you're able to make things right." Right. Like I was the one who messed everything up. So I told the truth. All of it. I started replying one message at a time. I told them that Ben was intentionally excluded, that my parents laughed while my sister's kids ate like royalty, and when I ordered him a meal and said Dad would pay, suddenly I was the problem. I told them my mom emptied a joint account I was using for my mortgage. And I told them I wasn't letting them back into my life unless they fixed it. Most of them didn't reply. One aunt sent, "Families argue. You shouldn't take it so far." That night I invited my parents over. Not to apologize, I wanted to see if there was anything left worth salvaging. They arrived looking smug. My mom asked if I was finally ready to admit I overreacted. My dad said something about immaturity. Then my mom added that if I apologized for ruining dinner, she'd consider giving the money back. I told them both to get out. My dad stood up quickly. My mom tried to talk over me, but I didn't say another word. I just opened the door and pointed. When they left, I locked the door behind them. And then it hit me. Not just the betrayal but the clarity. They were never going to change. They didn't care about Ben. They didn't respect me. And the only time they'd ever treated me like family was when they needed something. But the universe had one more twist waiting. 3 days later, while I was helping Ben with his science project, someone knocked at the door. I looked through the peephole and had to blink twice. It was my grandmother, Betty, suitcase in hand. And her first words? I heard what happened. "I'm here to clean up the mess." My grandmother Betty never showed up unannounced. In my entire life she had never once just appeared. So when I opened the door and saw her standing there with a suitcase, a travel mug, and that look on her face, my stomach dropped. She walked past me like I'd already agreed. I heard enough nonsense on the phone. "I'm staying a few days." Ben peeked around the corner. She smiled at him, bent down, and handed him a small bag of candy like this visit had been planned for weeks. Then she sat at my kitchen table and told me to start from the beginning. "Not your mother's version. Yours." So I told her everything. Fully. I didn't leave anything out. I told her about the restaurant, about how my sister's kids ordered custom meals and sodas, how Ben sat there with nothing in front of him. I told her exactly what my dad said. How my mom laughed. How they expected my kid to cry and how he didn't. How I ordered the steak and told the waiter my dad would pay. How they stared at the check like I'd committed a crime. Then I told her about the next morning. About the joint account. About the $4,000 vanishing. About the phone call where my mom said it was never really my money anyway. Betty didn't interrupt once. She didn't react the way people usually do. No gasps. No head shaking. She just listened. When I finished, she sat there quietly for a moment, then took out her phone and dialed my mom. She put it on speaker without asking me. My mom answered fast. "Did you take the money out of the joint account?" Betty asked. My mom paused. Then said yes. "We decided it was time." Betty said, "Whose money was it?" My mom laughed a little and said, "We're family. It doesn't matter." Betty ended the call. "No goodbye." She looked at me and said, "They've been doing this your whole life, haven't they?" That night, Betty stayed up late with me at the kitchen table. He told me things I didn't know. That my parents borrowed money from her constantly. That they never paid it back. That my mom had always played the victim whenever Betty pushed back. That my dad stayed quiet and let it happen. Over the next few days, Betty slipped into our routine like she'd always been there. She made breakfast. She walked Ben to the bus stop. She asked him about school and actually listened to his answers. One afternoon, she helped him finish his science project and drove him to school early the next morning so he wouldn't miss judging. She didn't mention my parents much. Just kept saying let them panic. On Thursday, she asked me to sit down. She pulled out her purse and slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $10,000. I told her I couldn't accept it. She said, "I didn't raise your mother to treat her child like a backup plan." That's when she told me about her new partner. His name was Walter. He owned a small bookstore out west. He'd been encouraging her to stop bailing my parents out for years. She said being with someone who didn't need her money changed how she saw things. Later that day, Betty made 2 phone calls. One to my mom. One to my dad. She told them they had 3 days to return the $4,000 they took from me. If they didn't, she would cut off every bit of financial help they relied on. No more help with medical bills. No more quiet loans. No more pretending they were independent. I didn't hear from them directly, but I heard through Lauren that they were panicking. Fighting with each other. Trying to figure out how to make it my fault. On the 3rd day, the money reappeared in my account. No message. No apology. Betty looked at my phone and nodded. Good. Step 1. Then she said something that made me nervous. "Now we see if they can behave like adults. I'm calling a family meeting." I wasn't sure what I expected when Betty said she was calling a family meeting, but it definitely wasn't a full-blown intervention in the middle of my parents' living room. She had apparently called each of them directly. Even Lauren's husband, Greg, who rarely showed his face for anything outside of sports or birthday parties. When Ben and I pulled into the driveway that Sunday, I could already feel it. The tension. Like the house itself knew something was coming. Inside, the furniture had been rearranged. Chairs formed a semicircle. Betty sat in the middle like she was about to run a therapy session. My mom hovered by the kitchen, arms folded. My dad sat stiffly on a recliner like he wanted to disappear into it. Lauren was already there with her kids. Earbuds in, faces down, their usual method of survival. Greg sat on the arm of the couch, clearly not thrilled to be summoned. No one offered me coffee, or said hello to Ben. Betty waited until the room was silent. Then she stood and took out a folded piece of paper from her purse. "You've all made a mess. And today we clean it up." My mom immediately cut in. "Mom, can we not dramatize this? Families argue. It happens." Betty didn't flinch. She just looked at her. "You stole money. You excluded a child. And you turned a birthday dinner into a power play. This isn't a disagreement. This is dysfunction." Then she started reading from her paper. Bullet points. Itemized. She listed it all, starting with the dinner. The way Ben was left out. The moment they told him he could share the roles. Then the money. The $4,000 drained from the joint account without warning. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the silence. And then she pulled out something none of us saw coming. Receipts. Literal ones. Bank transfers. Text screenshots. Even an old email from years ago when I loaned Lauren $600 to cover her car repairs. Money I never saw again. Betty had it all. Greg looked sideways at Lauren. "You never told me you borrowed from Monica." Lauren tried to brush it off, but Betty kept going. She brought up how my mom had borrowed money from her 3 times in the past year alone. How she and my dad still owed over $9,000 combined, and hadn't paid a cent in months. Then Betty looked at my dad. "You let your daughter be used. You laughed when your grandson was humiliated. I raised you better than that." He didn't say a word. Then she turned to me. "You didn't deserve what happened. And Ben certainly didn't." She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a bank transfer confirmation. $10,000. Already deposited. "It's yours. No strings. Use it for the new townhouse. Or don't. But don't ever think you're alone in this." Then she looked at my parents. "This ends now. No more lies. No more guilt. If you want help from me in the future, you'll treat Monica and Ben with respect. If not, you'll get nothing." My mom started to argue, but Betty held up a hand. "You're on probation. Both of you." Then she turned to Lauren. "And you've had Monica carrying weight you should have been helping with. You let your kids be treated like royalty while hers was ignored. That ends today." Lauren started crying. Greg looked like he was trying to figure out how deep the rabbit hole really went. Ben whispered to me, "Is Grandma Betty a lawyer?" I almost laughed. But just when I thought it was over, Betty added one more thing. Something that made the room go completely silent. "Also, Monica, I didn't come alone." Everyone stared. She stepped aside and Walter walked in. I'd seen 1 or 2 blurry photos of him, but never in person. He looked like a retired professor, calm, serious, but with a kind face. He nodded at everyone. "I've heard a lot about you all." My mom looked like she'd swallowed glass. Walter spoke once. "Betty and I are moving in together next year. And we've talked a lot about legacy. About doing right by the next generation. So this Christmas we want Monica and Ben to visit us in Oregon. We have something planned for them. Surprise. A good one." Then he handed me a card. Inside just an address. A plane ticket confirmation. And a note. "Come see your future." No one said anything. Not even my dad. After everything, it was Ben who broke the silence. "Can we go?" Betty smiled. "Yes, baby. We're going to Oregon." We landed in Oregon on a cold Wednesday morning, a little past 9. The flight had been smoother than expected, and Ben kept saying the clouds looked like ice cream the whole time. I didn't know what was waiting for us at the end of that trip. Only that Betty and Walter had paid for everything and said they had a surprise. We picked up the rental, a small SUV with heated seats which Ben immediately claimed for his new kingdom, and drove for almost 2 hours through mountain roads that felt like something out of a painting. Pine trees stretched up forever. Small towns appeared, then disappeared again. I didn't recognize a single name. That alone was comforting. Walter had sent me an address, but nothing else. No hints. Just, "Come see your future." The GPS took us down a gravel road just outside a place called Hemlock Grove. There, tucked between forest and sky, was a cedar-sided home with a wide porch and dark green shutters. A man stood waiting out front in a flannel jacket, hands in his pockets. He waved as we pulled up. Betty came out behind him with 2 mugs of cocoa and a smirk on her face like she knew exactly how stunned I was. "Welcome home," she said. I gave a polite laugh. "That's generous. But we're just visiting." Betty handed me the cocoa and didn't answer. Inside, the house was all warm wood, stone accents, soft light. A fireplace crackled quietly in the corner. Windows framed the mountains like paintings. There was a stack of board games on the table, fresh bread cooling on the counter, and the unmistakable smell of cinnamon. Ben explored like it was a treasure hunt. He found a room full of old telescopes, a loft with built-in bunk beds, a book nook hidden behind a curtain. He found a vintage jukebox in the corner and started pressing every button. That's when Walter walked me to the sunroom. It had floor-to-ceiling glass, with a view that made my chest hurt in the best way. "This space is yours," he said. He handed me a folder. Inside were property documents. Not for the main house but for the guest house, the loft above the garage, and the sunroom we were standing in. A legal split signed and notarized. The land had been divided. That part of the property had already been transferred to me. "You said you wanted a place of your own," Walter said. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere no one could take from you." Betty stood behind him, smiling. "We're not giving you a gift. We're giving you the tools." I sat down because I couldn't stand anymore. It didn't feel real. But it was. That night Ben and I stayed in the loft. He curled up with a book he found in the reading nook and whispered, "Can we live here?" I didn't answer. I didn't know yet. The next morning Walter made pancakes with apple slices and said he had one more thing to show me. We walked to the barn, which looked abandoned, but inside was a fully insulated workshop space. Clean, open, wired for electricity. He handed me another folder. Inside was a business plan. He and Betty had been working on it for weeks. They wanted to help me build a retreat space. Something small, simple. Writing weekends, art therapy, creative coaching. Nothing fancy. Just real. Walter would invest. Betty had contacts. I'd run it. "You've spent your whole life being used," Walter said. "Now it's your turn to create something that belongs only to you." We spent 5 days there. Every minute felt like peeling off layers I didn't know I had. Ben got color in his face again. He ran around. He laughed. He didn't ask once about my parents. But they asked about us. Text started the 3rd day. "Your grandmother's making this worse than it is," my mom wrote. "We just want to talk," said Lauren. "Let's move forward, not backward," came from my dad. I didn't answer any of them. When we flew back, I found out why they were suddenly so interested. Betty had updated her will. The same people who thought I was dramatic, selfish, disrespectful. They were about to be left out. Entirely. And now I had something they wanted. Access. Influence. Proximity to Betty. To Walter. To whatever came next. And for the first time in my life I realized something. They weren't trying to make peace. They were trying to survive. And I was holding the last life raft. Part 6 is where I make a decision, and it's not what they expected. Let me know when you're ready. The first time my mom showed up after the Oregon trip, she brought cupcakes. Store-bought. Vanilla with red sprinkles. The kind she used to call lazy snacks when I brought them to school bake sales. She didn't knock. She just waited on the porch until Ben noticed her through the window. I almost didn't open the door. But something in me was curious. She handed me the box like it was peace. Asked if we could talk. I let her in. But I didn't offer her coffee. Or a seat. She walked around the kitchen like she'd forgotten where things were. Like she hadn't sat there just weeks earlier, smugly defending stealing from me. Now she looked small. Careful. And when she spoke, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "We miss you. And Ben. I want to fix things." I didn't respond. She went on. She said she overreacted. That she was hurt that I undermined my dad at dinner, but that she realized now it had gone too far. That she didn't know I felt left out for so long. That maybe she had made mistakes. Maybe. I asked if she came because she wanted to fix things, or because she heard about the property, about the will, about Walter. She didn't deny it. She just said we're family. I almost laughed. Instead I nodded. Said I appreciated her coming. Told her Ben was in the backyard if she wanted to say hello. She did. He waved but didn't come inside. That was the beginning of the shift. It didn't happen all at once. My dad didn't come around for a while. When he did, he brought a book for Ben. A biography about astronauts. He stood in the doorway and didn't say much. But he looked uncomfortable. That, for him, was progress. Lauren was the next one to fold. He came to my house without the kids. Said she was sorry. Said Greg was furious when he found out how much she'd hidden from him. Not just the loan but the way she let our parents divide us. Then she asked me something I didn't expect. She asked if she could invest in the retreat project. I didn't say no. I didn't say yes. I told her I'd think about it. That was my new rule. I didn't shut the door. But I didn't open it wide either. Let them wait. Let them earn it. I said yes to my parents visiting Ben on Sundays. But only when it didn't interfere with our schedule. I let Lauren come with us to the museum on Ben's field trip. But she had to pay for her own ticket. No exceptions. I stopped over-explaining. I stopped trying to keep the peace. I just let them sit in the same space they once made unbearable. Only now I was the one holding the timer. They started asking more questions. Trying harder. Offering things. Could they help with the renovation? Would I want their input on branding the retreat? Could they be part of it? And here's the truth, I let them. Fully. Carefully. Not because I trusted them, but because I finally understood what they'd known all along. Kindness is power. And it can be used in both directions. They used mine for years. Now I'm using theirs. Only difference, I remember everything. And I never forget who ate while my son sat in front of an empty plate. Ben asked me once, do you think they're good now? I told him the truth. They're learning. And for now that's enough. But I have the keys now. To the house. To the retreat. To the peace I had to build with my own hands. And I'm never giving them back. The first update. It's been just over a month since that family meeting at my parents' house, and honestly, things feel strange. Not bad. Not fake. Just strange. Like living in a version of reality I never thought I'd get to experience. Ben and I spend weekends at the retreat property now. The contractor Walter recommended finished sealing the guest house, and the sunrooms being converted into a workshop space. Betty was right. The view alone makes people feel like they can breathe for the first time in years. I already have 2 women from Portland signed up for a writing weekend in January. Ben calls it our mountain house. As for the family, they're behaving. My mom now asks before visiting. She brings groceries sometimes. The expensive kind I used to wish for when I was juggling 2 jobs. Organic fruit, fancy bread, those little juices Ben loves but we could never afford. She never asks for anything back. Lauren sends memes now. Dumb ones. Cat videos. It's weirdly disarming. She offered to design a logo for the retreat and didn't take it personally when I said no. She's learning boundaries slowly. My dad doesn't talk much, but when he does, it's usually to Ben. He came over last weekend and helped him build a birdhouse. No lectures. No weird jabs at me. Just sat on the porch and explained the difference between nails and screws like it was the only thing that mattered. But I haven't forgotten. I still keep my distance. Still have a separate account. Still remind myself what they're capable of when they think no one's watching. Betty, though, she's never changed. She calls every morning now just to check in. Sometimes she and Walter drive out for lunch and bring sandwiches from this little cafe down the hill. She always brings extra napkins. She always remembers what Ben doesn't like. And she always smiles like she's finally seeing the version of her family she used to hope for. She said something last night that stuck with me. I spent too many years giving chances to people who thought kindness was weakness. But I see now you're kind. But you're not weak. That's the difference. And I realized, she wasn't just talking about them. She was talking about me. The girl they used to guilt into silence is gone. Now, I'm the one setting the table. And this time, everyone eats or they leave.